Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started now. Won't keep you too much longer, but just wanted to say welcome everyone this afternoon to the City of Festivals informational webinar. We've got some folks who will be giving you a walkthrough of the application and some of the other questions, frequently asked questions today. If you are a Spanish or Vietnamese speaker, we do have a couple languages you can listen into. We've got some interpreters on the line, and we do plan on posting those as well after the fact. But just as kind of a housekeeping thing, this is my very first time doing live language interpretation with Zoom. So if you do need one of those language channels, you should see something on the bottom of your screen that says interpretation, and you can select that and go into one of those other language channels, and you should be able to hear the translation. If you, I see a hand raised. Let's see. If you are having issues, feel free to raise your hand or put in the chat and we'll figure this out. Like it said, this is my first time doing it. So yeah, let me see. I've got one hand raised. Are you having issues with the language?
Aubrey, there is a question about how they can watch the webinar later.
Yes. So after the fact, we'll have the webinars uploaded onto the sacramentofestivals.com page so that you can watch the recordings later. Like I said, we're going to try and have the interpretations on that page as well. So you can watch it in Spanish, Vietnamese, and post the fact we're planning to have it in Hmong as well. So you'll go to that sacramentofestivals.com webpage and we'll have the recordings there so you can watch them later. So if there are no other questions or issues with interpretation, hopefully there are not, then we'll go ahead and move on to the fun part. I'll have my colleague Valerie Mamone talk about, we'll introduce you to the webinar and introduce Leslie.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for the City of Festivals webinar. We appreciate your interest in applying for the grant and so happy that you're here to go through this instructional webinar with us. Our goal today is to make this very interactive and have you just be available to ask us questions. And Leslie is going to go through the application page by page. So if you do have questions, we would like you to please put them in the chat. I am one of the program managers, as well as Sabrina Teft and Leslie Fritchie. So if you put the questions in the chat, we will make sure that we represent your question and ask it for you. If Leslie answers the question and you feel like it still hasn't been asked, then feel free to raise your hand and we'll make sure that we get it addressed completely. So with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and introduce Leslie. Leslie Fritchie is with the Office of Innovation and Economic Development, and she is going to walk us through the application for the City of Festivals grant, which, as many of you know, is a citywide program, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you, Valerie. This is Leslie, as Valerie introduced, and I'm very glad to see so many participants and so much interest in our City of Festivals grant application. So we will be going through the application page by page, hopefully in a manner that will allow the translators to translate so that it is accessible to a variety of folks. So let's start. The easy way to get to the City of Festivals information in the application is to go to sacramentofestivals.com. So when you take that first step, I will show you the screen that will appear. It will look like this. So it will have the City of Festivals, some general background.
Leslie, it's not on yet.
Oh, it is not
We're
on?
not seeing it, no.
Okay. Thank you, Valerie. Let's see why. Share screen. Mm. Now, I'm hopefully you
got
are seeing the screen. My apologies. But when you go to the sacramentofestivals.com, you will see the screen show up. So here's information about the webinar, but obviously you found that information already because you're with us today. But there is information here, some general information, but I wanted to point out a few key tabs. Here in the right-hand section on the top are guides. I'll click on that, and you will see that there is information. There's the program guidelines. It will have information about various translations in language, in Spanish, Hmong, and Vietnamese. And then it will also have some information about the event permits. So that's just a handy link as you go through the applications. And then this next tab on that corner is frequently asked questions. We try to predict what questions we may get. So we put these together and hopefully you will find these useful as well. So let's go to the real heart of the matter, which is the apply button. So when you first apply, I need to go back. You will get a screen that will ask you to sign in. So I have already signed in, and when you have to sign in and apply, it will ask for your email address, your password, and then you can sign up as a participant. So when you do, you will get this screen that will show what progress you've made. You've made no progress thus far. So let's continue on with the application. So the first screen you will see is the application form. It will ask for your information, street address, city, zip code, phone. Pretty straightforward. I'm going to press this button, this previous button, just so you can see that it will ask for some information next about, this is actually the first screen. This is the applicant information. And it will ask for your information that I just mentioned. And then are you submitting as an organization or as an individual? So let's just say you're submitting as an individual. Then you go to the next button. This is the screen that I had previously pulled up that will once again ask for your information, the name, street address, city, etc. So then I'll click the next button. And it says, sometimes events happen more than once. Sometimes they are only once an occasion. So you click on whether your event is a one-time or whether it's a series of events. Let's just for now say it's a one-time event. Okay, pretty straightforward. And we'll go to the next button. Is this your first time running the event? Let's just say yes. This is your first time running an event. Will you still run the event if your application isn't awarded money? Let's just say you're committed. You're going to go ahead and run the event even if you don't receive the funding. Will your event take place at a single location, or do you envision doing it potentially in many locations, maybe different locations in the city? I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to make it a single location, ask for your address, the council district that the event will be in. And this button right here will take you to a handy link. If you're uncertain where that address, which council district that address is in, you can click, not this link, but you can go to this website and click in your, or put in your address, and it will then show what district your event will be taking place in.
Leslie, I have a question for you before you get far away from that.
Certainly, Aubrey.
If you have an event that, how do you distinguish multiple locations of an event and multiple occurrences of an event? So 2 pages back, you said this is a one-time versus multi-time.
I'll go back there and let's take a look at the question. This is a one-time event. So we said yes.
So here on that page, when it says one-time event, are we saying a speaker series that takes place in the month of August is a one-time event, or is that a series of events?
I think if it is a speaker series, that's many different times. So that would be a series of events. I would click, in that instance, I would click series of events.
Thank you.
So see how handy this site is. You can go forward and backwards as your questions. And if you decide maybe you answered something incorrectly, you can always go back and change it and fix it. Okay, let's continue on to where we were. We were talking about the council district and how you can find out which council district your event will be taking place in. And this particular screen says, what dates and times do you propose to hold the event? Now, recognizing this may be sometime in the future, by now, hopefully you have some idea of when you will hold it and generally the start and end times. Once again, we'll just go to the next screen. How many people do you anticipate will attend the event? Hopefully you'll have lots. Let's just say you plan an event and there'll be 100 people. You would place 100 right here. And if you have a particular logo or login you want to send, you can update, you can upload a file right here in this upload file button. Okay, let's continue on. So let's say tickets, let's
Leslie,
pretend, yes.
we have a couple of questions from that last session.
Okay, please, let's ask.
Some folks want to know why they would need a BOT number.
Okay, if you run an event in the city, it will require that you sign up as a vendor with the city, and a business operation tax number will be required to do that.
Okay. And then another question, is there a minimum that must attend? And I'm assuming they mean there a minimum number of guests or attendees that must attend?
We haven't established any minimum. I think it should be anything over one. Hopefully we're not paying for an event that is just for yourself. So we are hoping that these events are used by a lot of people, but there is no minimum. Thank you for the question.
And then finally, there is a question about the impact of your event and how to gauge the level of importance to how you put together your event. So they're wanting to kind of know, in awarding somebody, is community involvement more important than an event plan or attendees?
In the program guidelines, you will see that there is a list of criteria that we'll be using to evaluate the applications. So I would refer to the program guidelines, which outlines those specific requirements and how we'll be evaluating those applications.
Okay. And then the last one, I'll just say that as you're filling out this application, you can pause and come back to it later. Up at the top left-hand corner of the application, you can see that there is a percentage that'll show you where and how much you have completed. and you can absolutely get in and out of the application as you deem necessary and get back in and start up where you left off. And I think that's it. You can proceed, please.
Okay, well, let's go to the ticket section. So the earlier question asked about the number of attendees. This section gets at that in some ways. So tickets are a useful way to keep track of how many people you have in the attendees. And as part of our application process, we want you to estimate how many you may get. And then afterwards, the award will actually ask, how many did attend the event. So tickets are an important way to really gauge how many do come. So this box asks, will attendees need a ticket to enter your event? I'm going to say they're going to need a ticket, but you could say no, or maybe at this point you don't know. But at this point, to be consistent, I'm going to say that they will need a ticket. So the tickets are one way, but there'll be other ways you can track attendance at your event. And it might be a number of different ways. You might do a head count. You might do a roll call. You might actually have some type of online registration. This particular screen just asks you to fill out the information as you might know it now on how you're going to gauge attendance and how much you will charge if the ticket is involved. Generally, have you given that some thought? This particular question is really, and page is to trigger your mind as to, how are some of your finances going to come together if you're going to have a ticket? Would there be a cost to that? What will that mean in terms of revenue? But this is really just walk through the application process, check the boxes that you feel you will utilize to gauge your attendance, the cost of the ticket, and what will the ticket potentially cover. Maybe it just gets you in the door, but maybe it also helps pay for the entertainment, or maybe it will also get you a ticket for a free beverage or something like that. So just check those that you think apply to your particular situation and the event as you're planning it at this point in time. So we do want to see if you have some business reference, just to make sure that there's somebody there to support you. So this is just asking for just one particular business reference that we could verify as we're reviewing the applications. So that's the entire first section. So congratulations. Let's go on to the next section. I'll pause to see if anyone has any questions that we haven't answered. So we'll pause and see if any questions come up in the chat for a minute before we proceed.
There was one question that is, again, kind of going back to the goals of the program. Wanted to know if there's any specific outcome that the city's looking at for funding and awarding people.
Certainly, I think in the guidelines and the FAQs and in the council approval, we really focused on activities and special events that'll activate public spaces, enrich the lives of residents. That could occur in many different ways, encourage partnerships between organizations, foster a vibrant and diverse community, and then also potentially stimulate economic activity. An event may occur on a commercial corridor, for example. Maybe there's additional economic activity that type of event would generate. But those are our general goals in establishing the program, and some of this information that you'll see in the application will help us gauge how your particular event fits into one of those categories and fits into our overall goals.
And then there's a question about our free events considered more than a cost event. And I'm assuming they mean, go ahead.
Well, if I'm interpreting that as our free events prioritized a little bit higher than a cost, yes, since this is a program sponsored with public money, if the event is free, we would anticipate that would have a pretty wide appeal. So there is a little bit of a prioritization for those types of events that could be free. Certainly, we're hoping that all of them are public events also, but if they're free, that is a little bit of a benefit as we're evaluating the applications.
Last one, and then we'll move on, is does it matter how long the business has been active to apply for the grant?
No, we actually are hoping that this does stimulate some new events. So, that's why we are asking for a business reference, even if it is a new event. Maybe there's someone that can say, you have some experience in another area, but new events are encouraged. Okay, with that, I'm going to continue because there's a few other sections and there may be some detailed questions as we get further into this application. So this first is just a general outline of the event plan and event description. We're going to be walking through coming up some of the purposes, what you hope to achieve, and who your team is as you're putting together the event. So the first is event description. It generally asks, what's your event purpose? Why are you holding this event? What do you think it will accomplish for the community? And what are some of the goals? Similarly, do you have a mission or a vision that you would like to have this event fit into? And then have you thought about your team? What's the team and the organizational structure that will help you make sure you put on a very successful event? And perhaps you maybe experienced that you have an organizational chart, or maybe even just a sketch of one as you're putting together your event. We certainly welcome you to upload that file so we can see that you have kind of established a team. It's not necessary, but if you have something, that might be good to upload. All right, so then let's talk about the event, the real fun part.
Hey,
So,
Leslie, I
yeah.
do have a couple of questions.
Okay, I'll go back and we'll tackle those questions.
Yes, so there's a question about, can multiple individuals apply for the funding in a same event? So an example is if there's 3 festival organizers and they come together and they want to create a large scale event that's like $23,000, can they each apply for $7,500 for this event or a series of events?
We will be looking at the $7,500 maximum grant award is per event. So even if it includes multiple organizations, our guidelines include $7,500 per event, not per organization.
And there's a question about, it's this the first year the grant opportunity has been offered. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the proceeding.
Certainly, this is kind of tearing off a City of Festivals grant that is available just in the very heart of downtown. It actually uses some funds from our parking because the goal of that program is to stimulate activities, but also to stimulate additional parking revenues in the very heart of our central city. So that program has been in operation for a very long time, but we thought it was high time to expand the opportunity citywide. So this particular program is using federal funds that the city received, known as the American Recovery Plan Act dollars. So we're using some of those dollars to stimulate these activities and help us get back and have some fun citywide. So it's federal funding that came to the city that we're using for this program, for this 2-year kind of pilot program. So the overall allocation for the program for the entire 2 years is $700,000, split up between several funding rounds. So at this particular point in time, we're envisioning making $150,000 award for this first round, which we can talk of in a minute.
And then Leslie, if an individual business is selected to receive the grant, can you talk about what determines the amount a company is granted, and then how will they receive those funds?
I think we will be looking at all of the applications that we receive by the application deadline. and be gauging some of the impact, how it meets the goals of the program, and what other resources they have to bring forward for the event. And that will help us gauge how much the award will be. We will have a committee that will be reviewing the applications and making those award determinations. But as I mentioned earlier, the maximum grant award per event is $7,500. And I think there might have been a second component to the question. So if you could restate that.
About how the money will be given. So maybe about the reimbursable part of it, I guess.
Okay, yes. I think the program as we have it currently designed it is that it is a reimbursable program. So the applications, I'll just walk through kind of that timeline as we have it established. The applications for this first round are due on June the 3rd. We will be meeting over the course of the next couple of weeks after we receive those applications and making a determination. And we will be letting folks know that whether they have received funding by the third week of June, by the week of June the 13th. And then we'll notify them, but it will be reimbursable. And so we will be reviewing the invoices for eligible activities. Those eligible activities are outlined in the program guidelines, which I showed you on the first screen, how to get to those guidelines so you can find out what is eligible. I think those are also talked about here in a minute as we're talking through the logistics plan. I will highlight those eligible activities in that section of the application as well. So this first round of funding, as I mentioned, the applications will be due on June the 3rd. It is to cover events that happen between July the 1st and December 31st of this year. So basically several months, but carrying us from July 1st through the end of the year is the first round. And then there will be 3 rounds of funding in 2023. That was a lot of information that I just shared with you. So if other questions come up, please place them in the chat and we'll continue through the application at this point in time.
I have one question here, but I'm going to save it for the section where we cover this area. But last thing, the geographic boundaries, can you just remind everybody that it is the city of Sacramento?
Like Valerie said, the application geography is the event has to occur within the city of Sacramento. Thank you for that reminder.
Okay, I'm going to let you move on because I think some of these are.
Yes, I think some of the questions probably may be addressed as we work through them, but they'll probably result in some other questions coming forward as well. So let's continue. So the product offering, this is the part where you really get to start bragging about all these great things that your event is going to have. So product description may be a little bit odd to call it a product description, but this really gives you the opportunity to say, hey, we're going to have food trucks, we're going to have vendors, who knows, we might have live music, a bounce house. If you could just kind of describe here some of the activities that you plan on having at your event. Okay, so, but maybe there's some events that are a little bit more oriented towards services. Earlier, we heard about a speaker series. That might be more in the service category. Or maybe there's some type of event that has information booths like health fairs or something like that. That might be more in the service category versus products. So hopefully you can understand the differentiation between kind of a product and service. But if you think it's in the service description or more of a service, please describe it here. Okay, so we want you to think about who's going to be attracted to your event, and have you given some thought how you're going to do some of that outreach. So let's talk about the market analysis. We're not asking for a very thorough market review. Excuse me, my computer's acting up a little bit here. But we do want you to think about who your target market is. Do you have specific demographics that you hope to reach? Do you have any idea how large your market might be? Any information that you might have at this point that describes the target market would be very helpful for you to share with us in this section. So maybe you've given some thought, hopefully you have, because you had to talk about it above where your location is, but maybe you want to highlight why you chose that location. Maybe there's some specific benefits. Maybe it's a community type of event and you want to make sure it happens in that community. Well, that certainly is a benefit to have a community event in the community that is involved, directly involved. So this is for you to describe what some of the locational benefits might be. So, okay, we've identified where it's going to be, who your target market is. This next section kind of asks you, have you given some thought to how you're going to get the word out about your event? So do you have this is a positioning strategy. Have you thought about how you're going to get the word out about your event, position it in a way that makes it successful or has a good chance for success? So do you have a marketing strategy? Have you thought about what types of outreach you're going to do to share the good word about your great event that we know is going to be happening? So the event plan, hopefully you've given some thought that we're going to hold this event, but we know it's going to cost some funding. This next section asks you to detail a little bit what you've come up with in terms of costs for your event. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a section that talks about the expenses that are eligible under the program. So we talked of it being a reimbursable program, but hopefully it can include almost all of the things that you might need to hold an event. It can be used for your equipment, your permits, maybe security or your marketing events. Sometimes you might need special equipment or some type of trash, some restrooms. All of those things are eligible expenses for the program. They're in more detail outlined here in the program guidelines. So we put a little handy link here for you to review the program guidelines so you can see what expenses are eligible under our grant. So this next section talks about some things that may not be eligible. Well, actually, are not eligible. So food and beverages, labor costs, those are costs that, and cost for the venue are not eligible, but we think the $7,500 probably will be able to cover those other types of expenses so that you can see that you will have plenty of cost that will be needed for you to consider as you're putting together your event and then applying for the grant. Okay, this next section asks you to really kind of outline for us what you think your project is going to cost total. Please list your total reimbursable and non-reimbursable expenses. So you'll see here, if you could just outline the type of expense, the expense amount. Chances are you're going to have several of these, so you can click here where it says add an expense. But perhaps you already have a detailed list of expenses that's easier for you to put in or share with us versus filling out this. You could just upload a file. Right.
Leslie, I'm getting a lot of questions here. So can you maybe slow down a little bit and maybe go back? I'm getting questions on the funding and the reimbursable to non-reimbursable.
Let's go back.
Folks are asking if you can select some of those options so they can see where it takes them.
Is that a Valerie question? Okay, so we've gone back a few slides. to go back to the reimbursable expenses to address some questions that folks have. So let's take a look at these reimbursable expenses. Let's just say equipment. We'll click on O, we'll need some equipment, permits, probably have some security costs. So those are some things that we think we're going to be asking the city to cover or pay for to some extent. So it just really, in this particular area, just asks you to identify those things that you will be requesting reimbursement for.
And just really quick, I think there is a error on our application. Venue looks like it's on reimbursable expenses. And then someone said it's on non-reimbursable. So if we can just clarify which venue is supposed to be. Is it a reimbursable or non-reimbursable?
Is it reimbursable or non-reimbursable?
We have it right now.
I think we will modify this application. The venue is a non-reimbursable expense. So this particular box, if I could, I would put a big cross through it right now. So we apologize for that confusion, but we have indicated that the venue costs itself are a non-reimbursable expense. So thank you for pointing out a glitch in our application. Okay, I'm going to go forward then to the non-reimbursable expenses. And I apologize, so this is actually, I'm asking you to articulate the reimbursable expenses, kind of describing what you might be experiencing in terms of costs and how much you'll be asking the city to cover potentially through the grant application itself. So this has one for equipment. It has something you could fill in for security. If I add the reimbursable expense, it will go through some of the other categories. So assuming you've filled these out, as I said, you could continue to add reimbursable expenses by clicking on this tab, but let's just continue. So this is kind of a total that adds up all the reimbursable expenses. And then the section that talks about non-reimbursable expenses. Once again, this is located in the right area of our application. A venue is a non-reimbursable expense. So these examples that we have listed here, and there may be some others that we didn't think of, venue, the food and beverages themselves, and labor considerations. So this asks you basically for your budget, as I indicated earlier. And if it's easier for you to upload a file that indicates your full budget, please feel free to do so. That might be an easy path that if you've already developed it on a different format. So this actually asks you, you've identified, what your costs are, but this asks, well, how do you envision paying for it? Will it, in addition to the grant funds, are you imagining getting a bank loan? Maybe you have some crowdfunding opportunities. These are just some examples. Let's say, I'll just click a few, advanced ticket sales, and then maybe you also have you have some savings. Maybe you've done this event in the past, or your organization has some funding you want to put towards this. Oftentimes events have sponsors, so maybe you have sponsorships as well. So just click on those that apply.
And I'm going to ask a question to you that was posed earlier about sponsorship. Some council districts will make funds available for sponsoring events. And there was a question that would they still be eligible for sponsorship from their council district if they received funding through this grant?
Thank you. My apologies. My juice was running low, and so hopefully it looks a little brighter now. We will be looking at how much in city funding will go towards the event, and we'll be balancing and working with the council districts how those two funding sources interplay as it relates to award amounts through this program. Are there other questions, Val, or shall I continue?
There's a question about whether or not you can apply for multiple rounds of funding.
At this point in time, we have not made any restriction about applying in multiple rounds. We are going to be viewing round one only at this point in time. And as I said, there will be potentially 3 funding rounds next year, but we will be assessing how much interest there is in each round. So you are able at this point in time to apply in subsequent rounds as well.
And Leslie, each round, approximately how much is available in total?
Each round, we have $150,000 in this first round. So there are 4 funding rounds. We are envisioning spreading the total funding out amongst all of those, leaving an allocation for this round, as I mentioned, to $150,000 for events that will be held from July 1st to the end of December.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Oh, one more. Or
Okay.
maybe 2, one more. Since you just talked about reimbursable and non-reimbursable expenses in the other category, what types of things might fall into the other category for non-reimbursable?
I can't think of it.
This is a bit of a stumper question. I cannot think of anything that would be in the other category. I think we tried to capture them in the individual boxes. I can't think of an other at this point in time, but I'll give it some thought, and maybe by the end of our session today, I will come up with something that falls into the other category. I will make a note and let my mind work through that question as we continue on. Good question, whoever asked it.
Yeah.
That was a bit of a stumper.
And I'm not understanding the under financial considerations with the question mark. There's a question.
And I guess while they're clarifying, that was asked some time ago, it might have been addressed,
Yeah.
but the other one about if putting non-reimbursable expenses into your application will affect your approval.
No, we just want to make sure you know that those types of expenses aren't things we can cover with the grant. They will not. It probably is accurate that you'll have both things that can be covered and things that can't be covered. So it's probably going to be a blend of those two. We're just asking you to think through what all it will take for you to run your event. Okay, I'm going to go to the.
We can go. Yeah, we can move on. The next.
I'm going to go to the previous screen just because it's been a little while since I had showed this. This is asking for the funding sources. Just check those, and then the next thing asks you to kind of articulate how much you expect from each of those sources. Once again, we know this is early on. So this is a point in time. If the numbers change, we understand how that works. This is well in advance of some of the events, but will just help us gauge and understand the scope of your project, the scope of your event, and whether you've given some thought to what it will take to put it all together. So this is very much in keeping with my last comment, just helps you kind of think through, well, I have listed all these expenses and I've listed the funding. Am I going to be netting a profit with those expenses, both in terms of revenue and expenses? So this is just asking, is it going to balance out, or what are you thinking in terms of your profit and loss? This is similar. This is just asking you to think through and maybe articulate if you think you're going to be turning a profit. Once again, we're not going to be gauging whether if you envision a profit of $10,000 or a profit of $50,000. That's not going to weigh in as we're evaluating the applications themselves. We just want to make sure that you've thought through your costs and your expenses and your funding sources moving forward. So this is the break even, which is just, do you have identified funding sources that will cover all of your expenses? Okay, we finished this section. So I'm just going to,
There was a quick question here. Someone wanted to know if you can have an indoor event.
yes.
Apply for an indoor, okay.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to, this is where we're getting rather specific about the event itself. So I'm going to move through this fairly quickly because once again, we understand that this is at the beginning of your planning, hopefully, or maybe you're pretty far along in your planning. So we'll walk through some of these elements and you can address them as you go along. This question was asked in some ways earlier about your team members, but just ask you to kind of articulate, who your team is, what their roles might be, and whether you're planning on using volunteers. I'm just going to say yes, I am going to be using some volunteers, and do you have any estimate of how many you have, and how do you think you're going to get those folks to help you out with that? So the venue, earlier someone said, can it be an indoor? Well, certainly, it could certainly be an indoor. It could be on public property, private property, or maybe a combination of both. Let's just say that the event is going to be held in a park. So if it's sometimes special events trigger what we have in the city known as a special event permit. So this link here will take you to the special event permit process itself and identify what you need to do to apply for the special event. A special event is triggered by attendance over 200 people, the event open to the public. Perhaps you're going to have alcohol. Maybe you're going to have amplified sound. It's not necessarily all of these that require a special event permit, but it may be, maybe you just have an event that's 200 or more. You may still need a special event permit. So please refer to these links to determine if you need a special event for your process. So this once again is where do you intend to hold the event and why? Will your event take place in a public park? I happen to like parks, so I'm going to just check yes. And once again, this just reiterates that take a look at those special event requirements as you're planning your event to make sure you give yourself some lead time, because applying for a special event takes some time. Give yourself some lead time as you're putting together the logistics for your event. Sometimes you may want to close the street. Maybe it's a street fair. Well, once again, going to check yes, because this link also takes you back to the special event permit, and the special event permit will outline some requirements if your event does have a street closure. So sometimes it may be an event that is in an area that has light rail or bus service. Many of the commercial corridors do. We're going to say yes, it does. Well, you know what? You probably should check with those folks that run the bus and run the light rail And here's some links to SAC-RT so that you can coordinate with them if it interrupts that service and what that would look like. Restrooms, a very important part of an event success, might be making sure you have enough restrooms. So there are some guidelines as to about how many might take for a certain number of people, how many events you may, or 250 anticipated attendees. I think the suggestion is that you have one portable restroom or restroom available for this ratio. So I'm going to say, does your event venue have enough restrooms to accommodate the anticipated number of attendees? This is really important to me. I'm saying yes. Parking, once again, does your event have enough parking? Have you given some thought to how much parking might be needed? This particular section also talks, this link, this little blue circle here, links you to our parking services where there's some valuable information about how you may be able to get some special event parking. I'm just going to say yes here again. Food and beverages, will you have food and beverages at your event? I want everything in my event, so I'm just going to continue to press yes. Well, many times the food and beverage will require coordination with the county health department. This is a link to the county health department permit process. So this asks you to articulate how many potential food vendors you have or plan on having at your event, food trucks, etc. Will any of them, any of the food vendors or food trucks at your event be cooking or heating? I'm going to say I don't want those folks to be able to cook on site. So sometimes that may trigger a fire department. There's a fire department guidebook to outline for you some do's and don'ts as it relates to cooking on site. So these are some important links that will just help you as you're planning your event. What methods will be used for heating food on site? Oh, it's going to be gas, and I'm going to have charcoal. I want that food to be good and hot. What methods will be used for starting and preserving food? I'm just going to say we're going to have fridges. Once again, these checking those boxes really are just to trigger your thoughts to make sure you've given some consideration to all of the special permits you may be needing for your event, and just that you've thought it through. And my event is going to have, I'm going to have some beer there at the event. So, you know, that's probably going to trigger an ABC license, alcohol beverage permit request. So once again, this is a link for those types of permits. So everything is a click away through this permit process. Which alcohol permits? I'm just going to say that it's going to require both California ABC license as well as an alcoholic beverage permit.
So we do have a question about this. It's asking specifically if the event permit for a alcohol beverage license will allow for the event to sell alcohol drinks after paying ABC fees and other permits.
I think for that particular question, I would ask you to refer to those buttons related to the alcoholic beverage control. That information would be contained in those links. We're not going to be answering those questions at this time. We're not the experts. Please refer to those permits and those guidance as outlined for answers to that level of detail. I don't want to guide you in a wrong direction, so please ask the experts by checking on those other permit requirements. So I'm just going to have beer, wine, and distilled spirits. You could tell my event is going to be lively. So this asks for some fencing and layout considerations. If you're going to require generators, tables, chairs, once again, this goes back to just making sure that you have the chance to think through it. And sometimes those do require some coordination with the fire department. So we have, which of the following items will your event require? You probably might need generators. Once again, this triggers some fire department review, as does the fencing. So as you click on these individual pieces, for example, tents, that too may require some fire department review. So this is just intended to be a helpful tool, so you know what other resources you might want to review as you're putting together the event program and the different elements that you need to consider as you're developing your event.
Leslie, would pop-up tents or pop-up canopies fall under tents?
Pop-up canopies could be considered as tents. So it does depend on whether they're open or whether they have enclosures on the sides. So once again, the fire department guidance is quite good on that. And so I would ask that you take a look at some of that guidance. So sound and entertainment, we're going to have like this great little rockin' DJ here at our event. So we're going to have some amplified sound. Once again, that might require an entertainment permit. So check it out. If you think you're going to have sound, it may require an entertainment permit as you're building out your event. So those permits are things you can be working on. They're not a requirement to have in place as you're applying. This is, once again, a tickler to let you know that you may need these types of permits as you're putting on your event, as you're planning your event. Make sure you have time to look at those guidelines and allow for review and obtaining those permits. They are just not things you have to have in place or by the time you apply, but you will by the time you run your event. So this is just a reminder that keep in mind some lead time as you're putting together the pieces of your event.
Leslie, does the grant pay for some of these entertainment music type elements?
Music and entertainment is considered an eligible expense under our grant program. So this just once again asks you to outline some of the things you may have at your event. And then safety and security, a very important thing for you to consider as you're planning your event, so that people will feel safe and that your event goes off smoothly. Do you intend to hire security at your event or provide security? I'm just going to continue to say yes. And then it'll ask you, potentially, have you given some thought to what that might look like? Maybe you're going to hire private security, for example. Here's some information about hiring private security. Maybe you're not going to do that. Maybe it's you're thinking about some off-duty police officers. Once again, here's a link for some more information about those resources.
And security is a reimbursable item as well.
Yes, security is definitely in the eligible expense category. So there you go. Congratulations. Raise your hand. You've finished your application. But as Valerie mentioned a while ago, there are a lot of steps in this application, so you can stop at any time. Maybe there's the section you want to come back to. You can stop And as long as you have your login information, you can go back and refresh your application, add to it, change it at any time until you go to this next step, which is you can go back and review, or, maybe you're all good with it. Everything seems to be in keeping with the information you have at this time. Then you're going to send for approval. And so you click this button, send for approval. So that is your final step in the process. So I'm just going to remind you of some key dates.
Can I ask one last question? And I think you may have touched on it, but I think it's an important one since we talk a lot about the application for the grant, but it goes hand in hand with a lot of these permits and special events permits. And the question is, how long does it take to process the special events permit?
The special event permit can vary how long it takes to process it. It's certainly in busy times of the year, it can take up to 60 days for review of those permits. So that's why we are giving you kind of the heads up and the kind of some preview to outline some of these permits that you will need to have in place to put together your application. So if you're thinking of putting together an event and it's going to happen in the middle of July, for example, you may want to review that special event permit and get started on some of those things. So it's a busy time of the year in the summer. So our special event staff is small and mighty, but they may take a while to go through your application just because it's a busy time and they have a number of applications to review. Give that some time. As I said, it may be as much as 60 days.
Leslie, is there a way to look at the application before you fill it out?
Yes, this section here that says go back and review, you can go back and review your application to make sure it's in keeping with what your event will be and how you'd like to describe it.
So before they fill out, before they even start it or fill it out, they can go in, register, and they can actually just go through the application and look at it. Because they're asking if they can.
You have to establish a login. You have to sign in, and then you can look through the application, but you don't have to fill anything out.
I think if someone is asking if they can see the whole application in like a PDF form, blank, there is not that ability. But if you want to see all the elements of the application before you fill it out, you can certainly go through the application in each step and view it before you fill it out, and then go back and fill it out later.
That's correct. At this point, there's not a PDF version that you could look at. It might be something we may want to consider posting for the future, but at this point in time, there isn't that flexibility.
And then finally, we continue to get questions asking about reimbursable items. And one was if a speaker was reimbursable, and yes, it is. And I think the easiest thing is to go to the FAQs or to the guidelines, and there you can get to the attachment that has all of the outlined items on there that will help guide you in some of those questions. And then we have one last one. Do we need to have the permits before filling out the application?
No, you do not need to have the permits before filling out the application. We encourage you to get started early, review the application, and think through what kind of events or event permits you may need, whether you need a special event permit, an entertainment permit, or fire department, a review. Think about that as you're working through this application, but we do not require that the permits be in hand before we make the awards.
And then there's one last one. Are there previous applicants' information that have been granted?
This is a brand new program, citywide program. So as I mentioned, it's starting off a very limited program, but that program is very different in scope. So I would suggest that this is a new program in many ways, not in all ways, but in many ways, so that we don't have a track record of awardees that we could share at this point. Hopefully those on the call today will be awardees, and if we're asked that question in future rounds, we can point to you as some successful events that we've been able to fund. But at this point, the slate is clean.
Can an event that someone applies for be does it have to be a multicultural event, or can it be a one culture event or celebration?
It can be a one culture event. I will reiterate some of the goals of the program are to increase diversity within our city and highlight some of the diversity that we have, but it can be, your target market can be one particular culture. That's certainly something that we can fund and consider. Any other questions? So once again, let me give you a few key reminders. This great application that we just walked through can be obtained by going to sacramentofestivals.com. You will need to sign in, but there on that website will be program guidelines, FAQs, and then this application itself. And so this particular first round of applications, of which we plan on awarding up to $150,000 in total funding. The applications are due on June the 3rd for events that will be held from July 1st, somewhere in the range of July 1st to the end of December, an event that happens anytime within that range of the calendar. And the expenses will be reimbursable, but the grant awards will be up to $7,500 per event, not per organization, but per event. So those are the highlights of the program, and we certainly are open to any additional questions, and look forward to seeing all of your applications and all your great ideas to stimulate great activities for our neighborhoods, for our community, and for our city. So thank you for your interest. If there are any other additional questions, Valerie, Sabrina, I want to take a moment to thank our translators that have translated it here in Spanish and Vietnamese, and we will be posting those translations as well. The program guidelines and FAQs, I should mention, also are available in language. If you go to those original tabs, which I highlighted, those do include the guidelines are available in Spanish, Vietnamese, and Hmong, as are the FAQs in those three languages. If there's additional assistance needed for other languages, please contact us and we will try and provide some assistance in those additional languages. We're a very diverse community, and thank you for being such a diverse and engaging community. We look forward to stimulating all these great events. With that, I think I'll turn it over to my hosts, Valerie, Sabrina, and Aubrey, see if there's any other wrap-up comments that I missed. If not, I thank you very much for your time. I apologize that this ran over a little bit, but I think it's because we had some really great questions and a pretty thorough application that is both an application for the grant as well as kind of an event planning guide. So hopefully you'll view it that way and look forward to attending as many of these events as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.